Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. If you're looking for a professional book review podcast like this, visit vpod.ai. Today, we are cracking open a book that, honestly, it feels less like a business guide and more like a Molotov cocktail thrown right into a boardroom.
Yeah.
We're looking at Rework by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson.
It is absolutely a manifesto. You know, when you pick up a business book, it feels heavy. It feels like homework. It's all about adding things, more charts, more strategies, more hiring. Rework is the total opposite. It's all about stripping things away.
And it's written by the founders of 37 Signals, the company behind Basecamp. Right off the bat, they basically tell you to take every other business book you own and just shove it back on the shelf.
Yeah, they do. They say the traditional advice isn't just wrong, it's irrelevant.
Which I have to ask, isn't that a little arrogant? Ignore everyone else. Just listen to us.
It sounds it, sure. But their whole argument is that the traditional business model is just, it's broken. We're conditioned to believe that to be a real company, you need a 5-year plan, you need investors, a board of directors, an office.
All the furniture of a business.
Exactly. And Fried and Hansson are just saying, no, you need a product and you need a customer. Everything else is just ego and overhead.
And they specifically frame this, for starters, they seem to hate the word entrepreneur.
Oh, they do. Because entrepreneur feels so elite. It implies you're the next Steve Jobs or something. They're writing for the person who wants to start a side hustle or, you know, the small business owner who's just drowning in best practices that don't actually make them any money.
Okay, so let's get into the actual advice because some of it is pretty radical. The first big thing they put a bullseye on is planning.
Planning is guessing.
Yeah.
That's their core thesis right there.
Which, I have to be honest, that terrifies me. I'm a planner. If I don't have a plan, I feel like I'm in free fall. How do you run a business without a plan?
Well, let's think about why we write them. We write business plans because they make us feel safe. If I write down, in year 3, we will have 10% market share, I feel like I have some control over the future. But the authors argue that's just a fantasy. You have no idea what the economy or technology or your competitors will look like in 3 years.
So writing a 5-year plan is basically writing science fiction.
It is. And the real danger isn't just that the plan is wrong. The danger is that you believe the plan. You get so obsessed with sticking to the roadmap you wrote in 2024 that when a huge opportunity or a crisis pops up in 2026, you just ignore it because, well, it wasn't in the plan.
You're wearing blinders that you made for yourself.
Exactly. There's this metaphor they use about a rocket ship versus a plane.
Right, I remember that. A business isn't a rocket ship.
It isn't. With a rocket, you have to plan every detail before launch. Once it's up there, you can't fix a broken wing, but a business, it's a plane.
Meaning you can steer it.
You can steer, you can change altitude, you can decide to land in a different city if you need to. Rework just says, stop guessing, decide what you're doing this week, maybe this month, and figure out the rest as you go.
So start now. Stop talking about it and just build the thing.
Yes. The longer you plan, the more you talk yourself out of it. You see all the obstacles. If you just start building, the work itself teaches you where to go next.
Okay, but let's say I start building. The next step in the traditional playbook is to look at my competitors,
Right.
see what they're doing, and then try to do it better. More features, more options.
Mm-hmm.
But Rework says, don't do that.
They call it decommodifying your product, and this gets us to their whole philosophy of less.
But doesn't less mean worse? If my competitor has a Swiss Army knife with 50 tools and I just sell a knife with one blade, aren't I losing?
Not if your one blade is the sharpest, most durable blade on the market. Think about the software you use. Competitor A adds a feature, so competitor B has to add 2 features to catch up. Eventually, the product is just this bloated, confusing mess.
That's so true. I have apps on my phone right now that can do 1,000 things, and I only use like 3 of them.
Exactly. Rework argues you should underdo the competition. Don't be afraid to say no to features. If you keep things simple, you become the best option for people who just want the job done.
So you're not selling a checklist of features, you're selling a point of view.
You're selling an opinion, yes. When you pick a side, when you say, we are the simple, fast option, you create fans. If you try to be everything to everyone, you have no identity. You're a commodity.
Okay, I'm with you on the product side of things. But let's talk about the work itself, because this is where the book gets really aggressive. They seem to think the modern office is a disaster zone.
They call it the factory of interruptions. They identify the enemies of work. And if you ask people where they go when they really need to get something done, Almost no one says the office.
Right. They say, I go to the library or the coffee shop, or I stay late after everyone else leaves.
Because the office has become a place where you get interrupted. And Rework specifically targets the two biggest culprits. They call them the M&Ms.
The M&Ms.
Managers and meetings.
I think a lot of our listeners just nodded their heads. But managers are necessary, aren't they? You need someone to direct traffic.
In a huge company, maybe. But Rework argues that in a modern creative place, managers often don't have enough real work to do. So what do? They call meetings, they check in, they tap you on the shoulder to see how it's going.
And every time they do that, they just break your flow state.
It's worse than that. The authors compare work to sleep. You know how you need to go through sleep cycles to get to that deep REM sleep?
Yeah.
If someone wakes you up every 20 minutes, you might sleep for 8 hours, but you're not rested.
You'll be a zombie.
Work is the same. It takes time to get into that deep focus. If you have a meeting at 10, a call at 11, and a manager checking in at 11:30, you aren't working. You're just filling time between interruptions.
So their solution is pretty extreme. No meetings. Or, if you have to have them, make them painful.
Right. Don't have them in a nice conference room with donuts. Have them standing up at the site of the problem. If something is broken on the factory floor, have the meeting on the factory floor.
It sounds great, but I have to play devil's advocate again. If we kill all the meetings and everyone's just in their own bubble, don't we lose collaboration, that team spirit?
That's the fear. But the counterargument is that collaboration is often just a fancy word for procrastination. Real collaboration happens when two people work on a specific problem. It doesn't happen when 10 people sit in a room listening to one person read a PowerPoint.
And this leads right into their view on workaholism. Usually when we talk about startup culture, we talk about the hustle, the all-nighter.
And Rework calls that behavior pathetic.
Pathetic, that's harsh.
It is, but think about the logic. If you're working 14 hours a day, you're not a hero. You're inefficient. When you're tired, you make mistakes, you write bad code, you send the wrong email, and then you spend the next day fixing the mess you made when you were exhausted.
Plus, it creates a toxic culture. If the boss is staying until 9 p.m., I feel like I have to stay, even if I finished my work hours ago.
Exactly. It becomes a theater of work, not actual work. Their takeaway is surprisingly simple. Send people home at 5. If you can't get your work done in 8 hours, the problem isn't the clock, it's your process.
Speaking of people, let's talk about hiring. Because if we're stripping away the bloated office culture, that must change who you bring into the company.
It changes everything. The first rule of hiring in Rework is hire only as a last resort.
Wait. Isn't hiring a sign of growth? We just added 50 jobs. That's a headline.
It's a vanity metric. Hiring means your cost just went up. You should only hire when you, the founder, the current team, are physically incapable of handling the volume. You should feel the pain a little bit before you hire.
Okay, so let's say I'm in pain. I need help. I'll put out a job listing. I get 100 resumes. Rework says, throw them away.
Basically, they argue the resume is just a marketing document full of exaggerations. I was responsible for optimizing synergy. What does that even mean?
It means nothing.
Exactly. Instead, they say, look at the cover letter. And this is interesting. They say you should look for one specific skill in everyone you hire, no matter the role. You should hire great writers.
Writers. Even for a coding job.
Yes, because clear writing means clear thinking. If you can explain a complex concept in a simple email, it means you truly understand it. And in a remote, low-meeting culture like they advocate, 90% of communication is written. If you can't write, you create confusion.
That makes a ton of sense. But there's another hiring point that I found pretty controversial about experience levels.
The 6 months versus 6 years debate.
Right. Conventional wisdom says the person with 6 years of experience is the safer bet. Rework says, not necessarily.
They argue the difference between 6 months and 6 years is often negligible. The learning curve flattens out. The person with 6 years of experience might just have 5.5 years of bad habits from their old corporate job.
So the senior hire actually has baggage they need to unlearn.
They could, yeah. A junior person with raw aptitude might be more valuable because they're a blank slate, they're hungry, they aren't saying, well, at my old firm, we did it this way.
I see the logic, but it feels risky. You're trading a sure thing for potential.
It is a risk, but Rework is all about questioning what's safe. Is the safe bet actually safe, or is it just expensive and slow?
Fair point. Okay, we have the product, we have the team, now we need customers. How do we market this thing? Please tell me they don't say buy Super Bowl ads.
Definitely not. They suggest a strategy that they compare to Well, drug dealing.
Excuse me.
The idea of giving the product away or giving a taste away.
Ah, okay. That sounds slightly more legal.
But specifically, they talk about teaching as marketing.
This is something I struggle with. If I teach people how I do what I do, if I give away my secret sauce, won't my competitors just steal it?
That's the fear. But look at chefs. Famous chefs publish cookbooks with their exact recipes. Does that stop people from going to their restaurants?
No. If anything, it makes me want to go more, because I realize how hard it is to actually do it right.
That's it exactly. Teaching builds authority. If you share your knowledge, you prove you're an expert. You build trust. And in a world of faceless corporations, trust is the most valuable thing you can have.
So instead of a press release, which they call spam, you should start a blog. Share your process.
Show your flaws. Show the behind the scenes. People connect with humans, not logos. If you show the struggle and the why behind your product, you build an audience, not just a customer base.
And part of that is taking a stand. They talk about picking a fight.
Yes. Great brands stand for something, which means they have to stand against something.
Like how Apple stood against the boring beige box PC in the 90s?
Precisely. You need an enemy. It doesn't have to be a person. Your enemy could be complexity, or hidden fees, or waiting on hold. When you declare war on something people hate, they rally behind you.
I love that. It gives you so much energy. But I want to pivot to the most contentious part of the book for me. There is one chapter that really rubs people the wrong way.
You're talking about failure.
Learning from mistakes is overrated. That is a direct quote. Now, hold on. We are taught from kindergarten that failure is the best teacher. Fail fast, fail often. How can they say that's wrong?
It's a bold stance. Their argument is that failure just tells you what didn't work. If you fail, you know method A was wrong. But that leaves method B, C, D, all the way to Z. You still don't know what will work.
Okay, I sort of follow.
Whereas success gives you a blueprint. If something works, you can do it again, you know you're on the right track. So they argue you should study your successes, not obsess over your failures.
I get the logic, but isn't that dangerous? It feels like survivorship bias.
Yeah.
Just because something worked for them doesn't mean it works for everyone. If I'm a doctor and I lose a patient, I better analyze what went wrong.
And that is the critical flaw in that chapter. It assumes the cost of failure is low. In software, if you write bad code, you fix it. The cost is time. In medicine or engineering, the cost of failure is catastrophe. You must learn from it.
So for our listeners, maybe take that specific advice with a huge grain of salt. If you're building an app, sure, focus on the wins. If you're building bridges, please look at why the other bridges fell down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Context is key. But there is one final metaphor in the book that I think applies to everyone, bridge builders included. And that's the idea of inspiration is perishable.
Inspiration is like fresh fruit or milk.
It has an expiration date.
I think we've all felt this. You have a brilliant idea on Friday night. You're so pumped. But you decide to wait until Monday to start, and by Monday morning,
The magic is gone. It's not just that the idea is stale, it's that you have changed. The version of you that was excited on Friday is gone. The Monday version is tired and busy.
So the advice is, when the inspiration hits, you have to act, even if it's just a tiny step.
Yes. You can't put inspiration in the freezer. If you don't use it right then, you lose it. It's a call to immediate action.
That is a really powerful place to start wrapping things up. We've covered a lot, from burning business plans to firing workaholics. What's the final verdict on Rework?
It's a shock to the system. Look, it's not a textbook. If you follow every sentence literally, you might drive your company off a cliff. But as a tool to break you out of your corporate coma, it's brilliant.
It forces you to ask, why? Why do we have this meeting? Why do we have this policy? Why are we even hiring for this role?
Exactly. It strips away all the furniture of business so you can just see the actual room.
So before we sign off, you always have a challenge for us. What's the takeaway for the listener to do today?
Okay, I want everyone listening to do a mental audit. Look at your calendar for this coming week. Look at your to-do list. If you stripped away every single meeting, every report, and every long-term planning session, what is actually left?
Probably not much for some people.
And that's the question. If you removed all that business stuff, would you actually be less productive? Or would you just be less busy? Because there is a massive difference between moving fast and actually going somewhere.
That is definitely something to chew on. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Rework. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.